So Alex, one of the things we didn't mention in the main body of the podcast, which I do think is particularly fascinating for people who are obsessing on a daily basis about better performance and how to achieve it, is this idea that you can genuinely measure it, or there are ways in which you can quantify and qualify it, according to you, because you created a global performance index. Just describe to us what that is, what it does, and what it can tell you.
When I was reflecting on becoming a coach, I started to look into the industry, and I realized that there were two issues. Number one, it takes quite a bit of time, for a coach to really dive into the details. You've got a lot of self-assessments kind of outside the coaching industry, but the coaching is just a bit different. So I felt that it takes a couple of sessions, and one of my initial client, a footballer, told me, Alex, it's just he really wanted to get down to things and less of the kind of initial exploration. Number two is, how do you measure the impact of coaching sessions? Great chats, awesome. So what? And I think coming from a finance background, I wanted to have a tool. And so I've actually built it. And I started in my kitchen with some Excel spreadsheets until it became something that is now fully automated. And so let me walk you through a little bit more about what it is. So the notion of performance for me is holistic. It's mind, body, heart, and spirit. This is not new, but injecting that into the coaching space is quite interesting. If I would take the analogy of a car, so the mind would be like the engine. It would be how focused are you? If you're kind of completely unfocused, then you've got a pretty small engine. But if you manage to be extremely focused and you've got multiple elements into the mental game, then if you talk about the body would be about nutrition, sleep, but also exercise. And the body would be like the electricity, or what you put in your tank. Georgie, if last night you slept 3 hours and we have this conversation, it's just the tank is pretty empty. So you see how that really impacts things. Heart is related, it's all like the gears of the car. It's connected to the relationships with people. Are you surrounded by inspiring people? Is your circle kind of expanding you, or is your kind of circle like a box? So the relationships aspect is very important. You can be in first gear, or you're surrounded by inspiring people helping you to grow. You're in fifth gear. So now you can have a big engine, you can have a full tank, and you can also be in fifth gear. But where are you going? And that's the kind of spirit aspect, which is the GPS in your car. What do you want? What's your vision for yourself? So you see, that's revolving around these 4 pillars, and then I just build up multiple keywords and elements that allow. It's around 55 questions, and then in a very simple document you can see a holistic view of what's happening. What usually I would see actually is, and you do that at the beginning, so that allows me very quickly to dive into some details. You would see some frustration, anxiety on the mind side. Then you see very little sleep. And then you would see not much planning. So you see how you start to connect. How about we were to talk about your anxiety that might be connected to the way you plan things and the impact you've got on sleep. And then you remember we talked about the Medici effect and how you move from an area to another one and how things are interconnected. And that's what I really love, is that you can really see from a holistic perspective. And so that is a very good standing ground to start coaching. This is just a tool, because coaching is really around asking powerful questions. But this tool allows me to have a very easy start, and then you do it in the end. And so you kind of rank yourself from 0 to 10, 10 being an absolute star, and 1 is like, very difficult for me. You do that at the beginning, then you go through the coaching, and then we see what happens on the other side.
So typically, what are you seeing from your high-performance individuals at the start, score-wise? If you had to take a benchmark, what are you seeing?
So it's quite interesting because you
can't go round the houses on this. I want a definitive number. What is a usual score?
So what you usually see is you see 2 things. 1, you see people coming 9 and 10 everywhere at the beginning. And you have some other people like 3, 4. And I could see some high-flying exec, seeing themselves with so much more that they can learn. And I would see some other people believing that, hey, they reached level 12 of Super Mario and boom, but there is always an extra level. So you may believe that you're a 9 or a 10. Are you really? Let's actually look into it through the coaching. So the key markers I would see as being, coming very high are frustration and anxiety is like naturally something I see really high.
Stress, I presume. Stress is a big marker.
Yeah, exactly. So I think from a coaching perspective, that offers directly a very interesting way in. Where is the stress coming from? And then you can go pretty deep. You see naturally from that, the body functions, can be a bit all over the place. Nutrition for exec is something that is distant, or they love cooking. And then, they actually do more of this. Exercise for exec is also something you've got to be really working on. And then also the interesting one is how you see some differences between intuition and planning. And you would see people with big intuition, but not so much into planning, or the other way around. Very good, very structured planning, but then the intuition, they like, control, but then intuition is just not good. Can't control that. So not looking into it.
What about sleep? Because what's interesting is in years gone by, I'm not sure it's the case anymore, but in years gone by, people used to be quite brave, bold, sort of emboldened by saying, oh, I only got 3 hours sleep last night. I only need 3 hours sleep, to function, whatever it might be. And it sort of gave them a little bit of gravitas. They're so busy in their day that, they only, can afford 3 hours sleep or whatever because they've got all of this stuff to do over the course of a day. Are you finding that people's attitude towards sleep, especially in those highfalutin roles, is changing? And they're appreciating how much they actually need it to function?
I believe with this, you've got to be conscious of it to start with, conscious of the importance of it, being aware of what's happening. So what I see is sometimes people, being very busy and not giving enough importance. But usually when we dive into it, you see that it's like if you want to win gold and you're not training. It's just so critical, especially for exec. When you've got a very important meeting and you did not sleep, or even for sports athletes, when you have to have important things, you must. It's just like so critical to sleep. So what I see, very often is like people are giving it like quite a good, amount of importance, but they just can't execute it. And so it's just going through coaching sessions and realizing how important it is and just changing the behavior, because from a coaching perspective, you really want to change behavior. And the behavior is only, the top of what you see, because below that, you've got the thinking, and below the thinking, you've got the feeling, and then the raw emotions, and then you've got the physiology. So for the behavior to work out, you go down to the physiology. And then when we really talk about this, then you come to nutrition, sleep, and exercise. And sleep is an absolute component of driving high performance. And if you don't do that, you're going to see for yourself. I can give you like a couple of weeks. And very often that's why you come here and you come to see me, because we can look at the holistic way of the changes that you need to make to have this kind of extra edge, or this big promotion that you want, or this whatever you want to achieve. It's looking at all these kind of details, and sleep being absolutely part of that.
Thanks, Alex. That's brilliant. Really interesting. Thank you so much.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you.